My heart jackhammered against my ribs, a rogue wave crashing through the numbness I'd armored myself with since Jake left 6 months ago, calling me too much before vanishing into the arms of some straight-laced finance bro uptown. Who was this guy? Tall, lean, with that effortless Brooklyn edge, faded jeans hugging his hips, a messenger bag slung low like he carried the weight of unpublished dreams. He paused at a poetry booth 2 aisles over, fingers trailing over spines of slim volumes, and I swear the fluorescent lights flickered just for him. I wanted to chase him, to demand why his gaze felt like a half-remembered promise. But my booth was a graveyard of unsold books, and I was just Adam Riley, the 28-year-old queer writer who'd poured his soul into pages no one seemed to want. I shook it off, or tried to, forcing a smile for the next browser. A middle-aged woman in sensible loafers who picked up my book, flipped it open, then set it down with a polite maybe later. The fair dragged on, a whirlwind of chatter and clinking coffee cups, until closing time hit like a mercy kill. As I packed up, stuffing dog-eared flyers into my backpack, I caught a glimpse of him again, signing a stack of hardcovers at the far end, his laugh cutting through the din like sunlight-piercing fog. Our eyes met once more, and this time he didn't look away. He tilted his head, a slow smile curling his lips, and mouthed something I couldn't hear. "You too?" My stomach flipped. Fate? Bullshit. But as I slung my bag over my shoulder and headed for the exit, the city's pulse syncing with my own erratic beat, I couldn't shake the electric hum buzzing under my skin. Maybe it was the exhaustion or the wine from the author's lounge, but for the first time in months, I felt seen, not as the guy who'd been dumped for being too emotional, but as Adam, raw and real. The subway ride home to my Bushwick walk-up was a fever dream of damp seats and flickering ads for self-help seminars. I replayed that moment on loop. His eyes, the color of damp evergreens after a storm, holding mine like he knew the jagged edges of my story without cracking the spine. By the time I collapsed onto my sagging futon, surrounded by teetering stacks of manuscripts and half-empty takeout containers, sleep came in fits, haunted by what-ifs. What if he was a reader, a fellow writer? Or just another straight ally playing at depth in a city that chewed up vulnerability and spat it out as trend pieces? 2 weeks later, the Brooklyn Book Festival hit Dumbo like a hipster invasion, food trucks belching gourmet tacos, pop-up bars slinging IPAs under string lights strung between warehouses. I'd scored a tiny spot near the water, my table wedged between a zine collective hawking manifestos on queer anarchism and a retiree peddling self-published westerns. The crowd was thicker here, a mosaic of tattooed millennials and stroller-pushing parents, the East River breeze carrying whispers of salt and possibility. I was mid-pitch to a skeptical college kid. It's about a guy rebuilding after his world implodes, you know? Like, finding grace in the wreckage. When I felt it, that prickle at the nape of my neck, like someone tracing a finger down my spine. He was there, 3 booths down, chatting with a vendor over a dog-eared copy of Giovanni's Room. James Baldwin. Fitting, I thought, my throat tightening. He looked even better in daylight, his dark hair tousled by the wind, a faint scar snaking along his jawline that begged questions I had no right to ask. Our gazes collided again, inevitable as rush-hour gridlock, and this time he excused himself mid-sentence, weaving toward me with the casual confidence of someone who owned the waterfront. Up close, he smelled like cedar and fresh pages. His hand extended before I could overthink it. "Ethan Hale," he said, his voice low and warm, laced with that faint Midwestern lilt that softened the edges of New York brusqueness. "Saw your table from across the way. Echoes in the margins. That's got my name on it." I shook his hand, my palm clammy against his dry, calloused one. Writer's hands, I clocked instantly. "Adam Riley. Thanks. It's my first rodeo, you know? Still figuring out how to not sound like a desperate hawker." He chuckled, a sound that rumbled like distant thunder, flipping open the book to the back cover blurb. "Nah, you're doing fine. A poignant exploration of love's quiet betrayals. Hell, that's got me hooked already. What's the real story behind it?" Heat crept up my neck. How much to say? That it was ripped straight from the Jake debacle, every metaphor a shard of my shattered trust? Personal demons, mostly, the kind that follow you from dive bars to dawn breakdowns. Ethan's eyes softened, searching mine with an intensity that made the festival noise fade to static. "I get that. My stuff's all about the spaces between words, the ones we don't say." He pulled a slim chapbook from his bag, fractured bindings, and slid it across the table. Trade you. Fair's fair. I took it, our fingers brushing just long enough to spark. Inside, his bio, Ethan Hale, 30, editor at a small press in Soho, specializing in LGBTQ plus voices. Poet on the side. No mention of a partner, but in New York, that meant squat. We talked for what felt like minutes but stretched into an hour, about Baldwin's unflinching gaze, the ache of unpublished queer narratives, how the city could feel like a lover one block and a stranger the next. He bought my book, signed his with a flourish. To Adam. May our margins overlap soon. Ethan. As the sun dipped toward the harbor, painting the skyline in bruised purples, he lingered. You hitting the after-party at Powerhouse? The one with the open mic. My pulse skittered. Powerhouse Arena, neutral ground, but loaded with subtext for guys like us. Maybe, if the universe conspires. It will. He grinned, that scar crinkling, then melted back into the crowd. I watched him go, chapbook clutched like a talisman. The river lapping at the pilings like it was whispering secrets. Fate? Still bullshit. But damn if it didn't feel like the universe was winking. The open mic at Powerhouse that night was a haze of cigarette smoke and half-tuned guitars. The warehouse space pulsing with the kind of underground energy that made Brooklyn feel alive, electric, untamed. I nursed a whiskey sour at the bar, the ice melting faster than my resolve, scanning the room for Ethan's tweed silhouette amid the sea of flannel and ironic tease. He texted, "See you there?" After I'd caved and given him my number on a crumpled napkin, my handwriting shaky like a kid passing notes in homeroom. Wouldn't miss it. I'd shot back, then spent an hour agonizing over my outfit. Slim-fit chinos, a button-down rolled to the elbows, enough cologne to mask the anxiety sweat but not scream trying too hard. He arrived fashionably late, slipping through the door like he belonged to the shadows, his eyes finding mine across the dim-lit chaos. "Adam," he said, sliding onto the stool beside me, close enough that our knees brushed under the bar. "A casual accident, or was it? Glad you made it. This place is a trip." We ordered rounds, the conversation flowing easier than the cheap bourbon. His move from an arbor 5 years back, chasing a lit degree and stumbling into editing gigs. My grind from barista shifts to MFA dropout, scraping by on freelance gigs and the occasional short story sale. He leaned in when I confessed the Jake fallout. He said I was emotionally vampiric. Can you believe that shit? His brow furrowing in that empathetic way that made my chest ache. "Sounds like his loss," Ethan murmured, his fingers drumming the bar top, inches from mine. "You strike me as the type who feels deeply. That's not a curse. It's a gift. Rare in this town." The words landed like a lifeline, pulling me from the undertow of self-doubt. When the MC called his name for the open mic, he hesitated, glancing at me with a vulnerability that mirrored my own. "Wish me luck. Break a leg," I said, but what I meant was stay. He took the stage, the spotlight carving him in stark relief. Tall frame hunched slightly over the mic, voice steady as he read from fractured bindings. His poems were gut punches. Verses about hidden desires in subway cars, the sting of family silences around Thanksgiving tables, lovers who slipped away like fog off the Hudson. One line seared, "We build cathedrals from whispers, only to watch them crumble under the weight of unsaid truths." The crowd snapped approval, but his eyes stayed on me, raw and searching, like the words were for us alone. After, buzzed on applause and adrenaline, we spilled out onto Kent Avenue, the night air crisp with autumn bite. The city thrummed around us. Honking taxis, distant sirens, the low roar of the Manhattan Bridge overhead. "Walk with me?" he asked, and I nodded, our shoulders bumping as we ambled toward the water. We talked until the stars blurred with city glow, sharing stories of first crushes. His, a theater kid in high school drama club. Mine, the lifeguard at summer camp who never knew. At my stoop, under the buzz of a flickering street lamp, he paused, hand grazing my arm. "This feels right," he said softly, his breath warm against my cheek. Then he kissed me. Slow, tentative, like testing the ice on a frozen lake. His lips were soft, tasting of IPA and possibility, and when he pulled back, his eyes held a storm. "Good night, Adam." I floated up to my apartment, the kiss replaying in Technicolor, but sleep brought dreams laced with doubt. What if he was just a flirt, collecting hearts like signed first editions? The next book fair hit like clockwork. The Bronx Literary Festival, tucked into a community center off Fordham Road, worlds away from Manhattan gloss. I arrived early, nerves jangling like loose change, Ethan's chapbook tucked in my bag like a good luck charm. We'd texted non-stop since that night. Memes about pretentious lit crit, late-night voice notes dissecting our favorite passages from Call Me by Your Name. Miss your voice, he'd sent at 2 a.m. one night, and I'd replied with a blurry selfie from my fire escape, city lights haloing my grin. He found me first, materializing behind my booth with 2 coffees in hand. Black for me, oat milk latte for him. Fuel for the soul, he quipped, settling into the folding chair beside mine, our thighs pressing under the tablecloth. The day unfolded in stolen glances and whispered asides. Him charming browsers into buying my book, me teasing him about his professor chic vibe. By afternoon, the crowd thinned, and he laced his fingers through mine under the table, thumb tracing circles on my knuckles, a quiet claim that sent heat pooling low in my gut. That evening, we ditched the festival wind down for a hole-in-the-wall taqueria in Mott Haven, plates of carnitas steaming between us. Over margaritas sharp with lime, he opened up. The pressure from his conservative folks back in Michigan, the ex who'd bailed when Ethan suggested going public at a family wedding. I keep parts of myself boxed up, he admitted, staring into his glass. Afraid if I let it all out, it'll shatter everything. I reached across, covering his hand. Then shatter with me. I've got glue, duct tape, even. New York special. He laughed, but his eyes glistened, and later, back at his Soho loft, exposed brick, bookshelves groaning under volumes of queer lit, we shattered in the best way. His bed was a tangle of sheets and skin, his touches reverent, mapping my scars like they were poetry. You're beautiful, he whispered against my collarbone, and for the first time since Jake, I believed it. We fell asleep wrapped in each other, the city humming lullabies outside. But dawn brought the first crack. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text lighting up the screen. Miss you, babe. Dinner tonight? From M. He stirred, silencing it quick, but not before I saw. Work stuff, he mumbled, kissing my temple. I let it slide, chalking it up to paranoia, but the seed took root, thorny and insistent. Winter clamped down on New York like a vice, turning book fairs into huddles against the cold, steaming mugs of cider at the Union Square holiday market, where twinkling lights strung across stalls battled the gray slush underfoot. Ethan and I had settled into a rhythm, the kind that felt like slipping into a well-worn coat. Lazy Sundays at his place, debating plot twists over takeout from ZN Famous Foods. Stolen afternoons in Washington Square Park, his head on my shoulder as we watched dog walkers and buskers. He'd introduced me to his cat, a surly tabby named Wolf, and I'd read him chapters of my second novel in progress, his feedback sharp but kind, like an editor who cared more about the heart than the polish. You're onto something here, he'd say, pencil tucked behind his ear, sprawled on my futon amid pizza boxes. The vulnerability, it's electric. Own it, Adam. Those words fueled me, patching the holes Jake had punched through my confidence. Ethan made me feel anchored, not adrift. His laugh a beacon in the fog of freelance rejections and endless subway commutes. We even braved a queer open mic at the Stonewall in one blustery night, his hand steady in mine as we navigated the bar's rainbow chaos. To us, he toasted with a gin and tonic, clinking glasses, and I'd believed it, the city's pulse syncing with ours. But the texts from M kept coming, erratic pings I'd glimpse when he stepped away to take a call. Can't wait for our trip. Love you. He brushed them off. Marketing contact, old friend. With a kiss that tasted like deflection, I swallowed the unease, telling myself it was the ghost of past betrayals whispering lies. After all, Ethan showed up. Flowers from the bodega on my doorstep after a bad review. A playlist of indie folk tracks for my writing slumps. His body a map I learned by heart under the glow of bedside lamps. Then came the New York Antiquarian Book Fair at the Park Avenue Armory. Opulent, overwhelming, a labyrinth of rare first editions and velvet ropes. I'd upgraded to a shared booth with a poet friend, nerves frayed from the upscale crowd. Collectors in cashmere, whispers of seven-figure deals. Ethan arrived mid-morning, arms laden with bagels and schmear, his smile cutting through my jitters like sunlight on frost. Brought reinforcements, he said, pecking my cheek discreetly. Public affection still a tightrope for him, I knew. We worked the booth in tandem, him charming a dowager into a bundle by while I signed for a cluster of wide-eyed grad students. Between lulls, he'd lean close, murmuring inside jokes about the bourgie bibliophiles, eyeing us like we were exhibits. It felt solid, this partnership, two queer guys carving space in a world that often felt stacked against us. As the day waned, champagne flowing in the VIP lounge, he pulled me into a shadowed alcove behind towering stacks of leather-bound tomes. "Been thinking," he said, his fingers toying with the collar of my Oxford shirt, voice husky from the dry air. "About us, taking it further, meeting my friends, maybe even family down the line." My heart swelled, a balloon ready to burst. "Yeah, I'd like that. Hell, I'd fight a snowstorm for it." He kissed me then, deep and unhurried, the armory's hush amplifying every hitch of breath. But as we broke apart, flushed and grinning, his phone vibrated in his pocket. Insistent, rude. He fished it out, face paling under the chandelier light. "Shit, I gotta take this." He stepped away, voice low in the corridor, words muffled but urgent. "Not now, Mark. Please just give me time. Mark, M." The pieces slotted, ugly and inevitable. I tailed him discreetly, heart pounding a war drum, peeking around a display of illuminated manuscripts. There, on speaker, a man's voice crackled warm, wounded. "Ethan, it's been months. You said you'd end it. Who's this Adam I've been hearing about from your posts?" The world tilted. Ethan, pacing, ran a hand through his hair. "It's not like that, Adams. New, real. Mark, I love you. But this city's changing me. I can't keep pretending." Pretending. The word gutted me, sharper than any rejection slip. I backed away, while rising, fleeing the armory into the biting March wind. The cab ride home was a blur of honking horns and tears I swiped at furiously. At my apartment, I hurled my phone across the room when his texts lit up. "Where are you? Everything okay?" Lies, all of it. The poems, the kisses, the promises. Props in his double life. He showed up an hour later, pounding on the door like a man possessed. I yanked it open, chest heaving. "Get out." "Adam, wait." He pushed inside, eyes wild, door slamming behind him. The loft felt too small, air thick with unspoken accusations. "Who's Mark?" I spat, voice breaking on the name like glass. "Your marketing contact? The one who texts love you at dawn." He deflated, sinking onto the futon, head in hands. "My fiancé, ex-fiancé. We met in college back when I was deep in the closet. Moved here together 2 years ago. He's stable. My family adores him. But it's not God. It's not passion. Not like us. Us." I laughed, bitter and hollow. "There is no us, Ethan. You used me. Fed me lines from your own damn book while you strung him along. I'm not your experiment, your real escape hatch." He surged up, grabbing my arms, desperation etching lines around his mouth. "That's not fair. I fell for you hard. The fairs, the talks. It was fate, like you said. Mark knows I'm unhappy, but leaving him means torching everything. The apartment, our friends, the life I built to hide in. I was scared, okay? Scared of being fully out, of what that costs in this city that pretends it's a rainbow but stabs you in the back." His words hung, a plea wrapped in confession. Part of me softened. The boy who'd whispered my name in the dark, who'd made me believe in second chances. But the betrayal burned, a firestorm of Jake's echoes. Too much, too soon, too broken. "You should have told me," I whispered, wrenching free. "From the start. Trust isn't a plot twist." He nodded, tears tracking down his cheeks, that scar stark against flushed skin. "I know. I'm ending it for real this time. With him, with the hiding. Give me a chance to fix this." The room spun, choices fracturing like ice. I wanted to pull him close, to rewrite the script. But trust, once cracked, let in the cold. "I need space," I said finally, voice steady despite the quake inside. "Go." He left with a ghost of a kiss on my forehead, the door clicking shut like a period at the end of a sentence. I slid down the wall, Wolf's distant meow the only sound, the city outside indifferent as ever. Spring erupted in New York like a fever dream. Cherry blossoms rioting along the High Line. Food trucks blooming with falafel and frozen custard. The air thick with promise and pollen. But for me, it was a slog through mud. Days blurring into nights of revisions on my manuscript, fueled by black coffee and the dull throb of what-ifs. Ethan respected the space, his texts tapering to check-ins. Thinking of you. No pressure. Then silence. A respectful void that echoed louder than arguments. I threw myself into the indie scene. Guest spots at Brooklyn Reading Series. Coffee dates with writing buddies who dragged me to drag brunches as therapy. You're glowing, babe, my friend Lena said over mimosas, eyeing my forced smile. Liar. I shot back. But maybe she was right. The hurt was scabbing over, revealing the muscle beneath. Mark reached out once. A hesitant DM on Instagram. Heard from Ethan. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. We both fucked up. Take care of yourself. I didn't reply, but it humanized them. The mess of two men untangling a decade of compromises. Ethan, meanwhile, went public in quiet ways. A coming-out essay in a lit mag, subtle shifts in his social feeds. No more vague couple pics, just solo shots at fairs, his smile freer, unburdened. I read the piece in a cafe off Bedford, heart clenching at lines that echoed our nights. Fate isn't a straight line. It's a series of detours, each one teaching you the shape of your own courage. He'd cited me in the acknowledgments to Adam for the margins that mattered. Tears blurred the page, a cocktail of pride and ache. The climax hit at the Brooklyn Poets Festival in June. Sun-drenched lawns of Prospect Park transformed into a literary Eden. Tents flapping like sails, air humming with spoken-word rhythms and the sizzle of halal carts. I'd been invited to moderate a panel on queer narratives in contemporary fiction, a gig that felt like vindication after months of radio silence from agents. Nerves jangled as I scanned the crowd from the stage, spotting familiar faces. Lena cheering from the front row, a smattering of fair regulars. Then, in the back, under the dappled shade of an oak, Ethan. Tweed jacket swapped for a linen shirt, sleeves rolled, looking like he'd stepped from one of his own poems. Our eyes locked mid-intro, the mic trembling in my grip. I powered through, voice steady as I fielded questions on representation, betrayal in love stories. The redemptive arc fiction lets us rewrite the endings we fear, I said, glancing his way. Turning tragedy into something human, flawed, but forward-moving. The applause swelled, carrying me off stage into a whirl of hugs and business cards. He waited at the edge, hands in pockets, expression a map of hope and regret. Adam, he started, voice rough like he'd rehearsed this 1,000 times. You were brilliant up there, as always. I crossed my arms, the old armor clicking into place. Thanks. Panel went okay, I guess. He stepped closer, the park's buzz fading to a hum. I ended it, for good. Moved out last month, crashing with a friend in Williamsburg till I sort the lease. It's messy, the fallout with Mark Circle, my folks sending passive-aggressive emails about finding Jesus. But I did it. For me. For whatever this could be. The air between us crackled, charged with the weight of unspoken months. I searched his face. That scar, those evergreen eyes, softer now without the shadows. Why now? I asked, quieter than intended. Because hiding wasn't living. You showed me that, your words, your heart. I don't deserve a sequel, but if you'll let me, I'd like to try. Coffee? A walk? Hell, a book fair anywhere but here. Laughter bubbled up, surprising us both. Light, real, cutting the tension like a fresh page. Around us, the festival pulsed. Poets declaiming odes to lost loves, couples picnicking on checkered blankets. The city stretching toward the horizon like an open book. I thought of Jake, the wreckage he'd left. Of Ethan, the detours we'd taken. Fate wasn't a tidy bow. It was this. Two guys, scarred and stumbling, choosing to turn the page together. All right, I said, uncrossing my arms, his hand finding mine like it belonged there. But slow, and honest. No more margins. His grin split wide, relief flooding his features. Deal. Starting with that falafel truck. My treat. We walked into the afternoon sun, fingers laced, the path ahead winding through oaks and uncertainties. New York didn't promise happy endings, just the grit to chase them. And in that, maybe, was the real story. Not perfection but persistence, the quiet romance of showing up again and again for the loves that felt like home.